We're looking for the big deal. We've taken it to this level. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars of tariffs. China's devalued their currency, and they're putting out a lot of money into their economy. And they have a very bad economy right now, and I don't want them to have a bad economy, but it's the worst in, they say, 57 years. 2 weeks ago, it was the worst in 22 years. Now it's 57 years, and it's only going to get worse. Their supply chain is go to 30% tariff, and we have 30% very shortly on $250 billion. We have another tariff at a slightly smaller number, as you know, on about $300 billion worth of goods and products. So they would like to do something. As you know, we're talking a little bit this week, talking a lot next week, and then top people are going to be speaking the week following. But I'm not looking for a partial deal. I'm looking for a complete deal.
Do you feel you need that deal before the election, sir?
No, I don't think I need it before the election. I think people know that we're doing a great job. I've rebuilt the military. Scott and I were talking about that. We spent $1.5 trillion. When I came in, our military was depleted. Frankly, we didn't have ammunition, okay? But our military was in very bad shape. We've rebuilt the military. We've got one of the strongest economies. Mike Pence actually got some, who's right here, a great vice president. He was talking yesterday, and he called me. He says, boy, these numbers, these consumer numbers are incredible. The retail numbers that came out 2 days ago that really weren't reported were really, I mean, just incredible numbers. You know that very well. That's your world. And some other numbers. We're doing very well. Our economy is very strong. And China is being affected very badly. We're not. We're not being affected. In fact, we're taking in many billions of dollars. And China's eating that. You know, China's eating the tariffs because of the devaluation. Now, that doesn't happen with all countries. China's China. And they know what they're doing as well as anybody. My relationship with President Xi is a very amazing one, very good one. But we have right now a little spat. But I think we're doing very well. Our country is doing well. You look at so many different things. Look at all of the regulation cutting that allows us to do what we did. Look at what happens 3 days ago where you have an attack like that, and it takes out a big chunk of oil, and the price goes up $4, $5, and now it's heading down rapidly. That tells you that would have happened years ago. It would have gone up $50. It would have doubled. And this was a blip. So it's been really amazing what we've been able to do. I think the voters understand that. I don't think it has any impact on the election. Now, if something happened, I think that would probably be positive for the election, but that's okay. I do think signing USMCA on a bipartisan basis with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and everybody else, very bipartisan. I think that's very important for our country. And I would certainly be willing to say that's a bipartisan deal. But I think that's very important for our manufacturers, for our farmers, even for unions. They want that deal done. And so hopefully that's going to be put up to a vote very soon. There'll be very little cajoling of the Democrats because most Democrats want it too. But the USMCA is ready to be voted on. It's finished. Mexico has taken their final votes. Canada is willing to do that anytime we want them to. They're all set to go. And we need that for we need that for our country. It's a great deal. It's a great deal. Thank you.
And for the Prime Minister, sir, your economy is to some degree caught in the cross-currents between the United States and China. What did you say to the President about what your ideal outcome is here for a China trade agreement between the United States and China?
Well, thank you. Look, obviously, we're keen to see the United States and China be able to come to an agreement, but what is always necessary is deals have got to be fair, deals have got to be good deals, deals have got to be sustainable deals. And I think one of the things we've seen, Australia has benefited greatly from the economic growth of China. We have a comprehensive strategic partnership with China and a free trade agreement with China. And they have grown and they have become, you know, a substantive economy in the world. And once you sort of get into that level, then you need to be able to be playing to the same rules as those other developed nations. And I think this is, you know, the new generation of deals I think we'll see China do, which the President has been working on, and he's been working on it for some time, and we wish him well in that process. There are some real serious issues that have to be addressed in that deal. Things like intellectual property, that's a big issue, and it needs to be addressed. So we look forward to them achieving it, and that providing, I think, the broader certainty and stability to the global economy, which all nations will benefit from.
And we could do, Scott, a very big deal with China, and it could go very quickly, as you know, but it wouldn't be the appropriate deal. We have to do it right. And that's a very complicated deal with intellectual property protection. We have to do that and other things. I could leave lots out and have a deal very quickly, but we want to do it right. Please.
Yeah, sure. Andrew.
I assume Andrew is a nice person. That's
to
why
quote you,
chose
Mr.
him.
President, the best. Thank you very much for hosting us. Also on China and tariffs, what do you say to Australian businesses and to Australian people who say that your trade war with President Xi threatens their prosperity? And to the Prime Minister, a linked question. Do you think that Australians are going to be collateral damage in President Trump's tariff war with China?
Well, first of all, I look at numbers. I love numbers, and the numbers of Australia are doing incredibly well. You're doing unbelievably well. When we have a deal with China or not, but when we have a deal with China because they want to make it perhaps more than I want to make it, because I actually love all that billions of dollars that's pouring into our treasury. Billions and billions of dollars. We've never seen that before from China. It's always been the other way. And I'm taking care of our farmers out of that. We're helping our farmers. Our farmers were targeted, and they were targeted for $16 billion, and I made that up to them. We paid them the $16 billion and had tens of billions of dollars left over. So I will say, though, that Australia is doing very well. If we do end up doing a deal, Australia will do even better. And we were discussing that, but Australia will be one of the big beneficiaries of a deal. And in the meantime, as you know, I did tariff relief with respect to a certain product in particular coming out of Australia. And that's something that we wouldn't do for anybody else. This has been a truly great ally, and we work very well together. But your numbers are absolutely fantastic. Your economy is strong like ours. And I think we're two real examples of two countries doing extremely well. Some countries aren't doing so well. Europe is not doing well. Asia is not doing. Large parts of Asia are not doing well. China is not doing well. Please.
Thanks. Mr. President, Australia is in its 29th year of consecutive economic growth, which is an extraordinary national achievement, and we will continue to grow as our most recent national accounts demonstrated. Australia is also very used to dealing with a complex and changing world, and that's why we're diversifying our trade base and have been doing that for many years. I mean, 6 years ago, when our government came to office, 27% of our trade was covered by agreements around the world. That figure is now 70%, and we're going to take that to 90%. And that's important, and that's opening up opportunities. So there are ebbs and flows that go in the global economy, and Australia has built up a resilience through the broad-based nature in which we're taking our economy to the world. I mean, Australia has never got rich selling things to itself, and we've always had an outward-looking perspective when it comes to engaging our economic opportunities. And a big part of what we've been discussing here is some new opportunities, whether it's in the rare earths, the critical minerals, the frontier technologies, space. You know, this is where jobs are going to be in the future as well. And so we will deal with those ebbs and flows as they come. But the President's right. The arrangement they will come to, and I'm confident they will, with China, will be one that will set, a new bar in terms of how China's economy then deals with a lot of these complicated issues in the future with developed economies like Australia. So we look on with interest, and I think ultimately when we arrive at that point, it's going to put global trade on a stronger footing.
And Australia's really been so focused on the economy. They do minerals. They have incredible wealth in minerals and coal and other things, and they're really at the leading edge of coal technology. It's clean coal, we call it, clean coal, but it's also great for the workers. And things that would happen to, because it was very dangerous years ago and very bad for a lot of people. And you've rectified that 100%. It's incredible. I looked at your statistics the other day, and coal miners are very, very safe in Australia. It's incredible what you've done. In fact, we're looking at what you've done.
We can do a deal on that.
I want to. We'll do a deal. We'll make a deal. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. In the midst of these escalating tensions with Iran, you've now named a new national security advisor, Robert O'Brien.
Yes.
What is he recommending to you in terms of dealing with the latest strikes on Saudi Arabia and the response? And then secondly, you announced new sanctions on Iran. Secretary Mnuchin said that this affects the last available funds for that regime. Have we now exhausted sanctions in regards to Iran?
Well, these are the strongest sanctions ever put on a country. We are at a level of sanction that is far greater than ever before with respect to Iran. Today we did central bank, as you know, and we'll see. We'll see. They're having a lot of problems, not only with us, they're having problems within their own country, and I think they have a lot of self-made problems. We are by far the strongest military in the world. Going into Iran would be a very easy decision, as I said before, be very easy, the easiest thing. Most people thought I would go in within 2 seconds, but plenty of time, plenty of time. In the meantime, they have a lot of problems within Iran. Iran could be a great country, could be a rich country, but they are choosing to go a different way. There'll be a point at which they'll be very sorry for that choice. But I think I'm showing great restraint. A lot of people respect it. Some people don't. Some people say, oh, you should go in immediately. And other people are so thrilled at what I'm doing. And I don't do it for anybody. I do it for what's good for the United States, what's good for our allies. And it's working out really very well. As far as Robert is concerned, Robert, maybe you could stand up. Robert O'Brien has done a fantastic job for us with hostage negotiations. I think we can say that there has never been anybody that's done better than you and I as a combination. We've brought many people home, and we brought them home quickly. Speed is a very important thing, I find, with hostages. It's really something. I had dinner the other night with the Warmbier family, an incredible family. The whole family and some of Otto's friends, in addition to the family. We had 25 people over on Saturday night. And we did that dinner in Otto's honor. And it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. First Lady and I, it was very, it was very touching and really very beautiful. We talked about Otto. And I will tell you that people should have moved faster. And Robert and I were talking about that. Should have moved faster. He was there for a long time. You got to move fast. With hostages, you have to move fast. All of a sudden, it gets very hard for the other side to do anything. And sometimes it's just too late. In the case of Otto, it was very late. We got him home, but he was in horrible, horrible condition. What happened to him was actually incredible, just horrible. But you have to move fast. Robert and I have been really successful. And the reason I know him so well, I actually work hard on hostages, I think you would say. I think most presidents wouldn't do that, but I do. These are great, I guess in almost all cases, American lives. We help other people also. We've also helped other countries with their hostage situation where we have some strength that they don't. But these are great people, and we get them home. We got them home from North Korea, as you know, and we got them home from a lot of different locations. Egypt, we got them home. We got them home from many different locations. Turkey. Yeah. President Erdogan was very good, and we got a hostage home. Our great pastor, who everyone in this room knows and loves. But we've had tremendous success, and what surprised me, I didn't know too many people knew Robert, and when it came time to pick somebody for the position, it's a very critical time, I had so many people, I shouldn't say this in front of Robert, he'll be embarrassed, but I had so many people that called me, and they recommended Robert O'Brien. So I think he's going to do a great job, and he was here. I can tell you this, he started about 12 minutes after he was chosen. He sat in with us, and he's very much involved now in what we're doing.
One quick follow-up on that in regards to Iran. If sanctions don't work and they continue their malign activity, are there any other measures outside of a military option that can be taken?
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but I will say I think the sanctions work and the military would work, but that's a very severe form of winning. but we win. Nobody can beat us militarily. Nobody can even come close. What we've done for our military in the last 3 years is incredible. All made in the USA, by the way. And it's really incredible. Our nuclear was getting very tired. They hadn't spent the money on it, and now we have it in, as we would say, tippy-top shape. Tippy-top. We have new and we have renovated, and it's incredible, and we all should pray that we never have to use it. We should never have to use it. And our military itself is in phenomenal shape. And we have a great gentleman, as you know, going to be taking over, Joint Chief of Staff. Joe Dunford has been fantastic. He's a great man and a friend of mine. But General Milley is going to be taking over, and it's going to be, we're going to have a little bit of a celebration, both for Joe and for everybody. And, as you know, our Secretary of Defense has just come in, Mark Esper, and he's been here for a short period of time, but he's got tremendous energy. He's got it. He knows it. That's what he's been doing for a long period of time, from the day he graduated, or maybe I should say from the day he started at West Point, where he was a top scholar, etc. So we have incredible people. And Steve Mnuchin's here. We did the sanctions today, and I think they're probably, Steve, the strongest that have ever been put on a country. We will certainly never do that to Australia, I promise you.
Then one for the Prime Minister, if I may. Mr. Prime Minister, you have been very tough on Huawei, even under pressure. You've been very consistent with the ban, even though you've said you have a good working relationship with China and they're important for your economy. Do you plan to continue to support the United States in the tough stance on China? And can you give any more specifics about what you've told the President you would do to help in his measures to reach a fair trade deal?
Well, first of all, I mean, we have the most perfect of relationships with the United States, and goes back a century and more, as the President was reminding us on the lawn this morning. We have a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. This is the part of the world in which we live, and managing that relationship is important to Australia's national interests. One thing I can always assure you, and I think the President can say the same, we will always, both of us, act in the national interests of our countries. We will always put our country's interests first. And that means engaging countries in our own region, not just economically, but at a people to level as well. We have a lot of operations we do together right across the world, militarily, and we'll continue to do those. But the focus, I think, at the end of the day, has to be what's best for our people. And that means a stable, secure region, and the presence of the United States in the Indo-Pacific, where they have been for a very long time, is a stabilising force in the region. And what does that mean? It means that countries can trade with each other, economies can develop, people come out of poverty. The United States has had a positive presence in our region, and that's why we always work together, because we share objectives. It isn't a matter of the United States saying to us, we need you to do this, or Australia saying to the United States, we need you to do this. It's about us having shared objectives and looking through the world through a similar lens. And so that just naturally brings us together to focus on the things that promote prosperity. As I started out in my remarks today, we love jobs, the President and I. We love jobs. And we like them jobs here, and we like jobs everywhere. And when people have jobs, well, they tend to focus a bit more on the things that are going on in their lives every day, and making sure they can live peacefully with each other.
And one of the things important, I think, is during our meeting, we discussed, I said, what percentage of your military do you buy from us? And the answer was we work it together, or it's about 100%. It's close to 100%. And we make the best equipment. He understands that. But it's a real relationship. They buy 100% of their military, and it's a massive purchase. And it's gotten bigger. I guess you said the biggest purchase since World War II.
Yeah, we'll be at 2% of GDP next year, and that comes up from what was the lowest level of defence spending as a share of the economy since prior to the Second World War. So it's a $200 billion investment, and a lot of that's being built in Australia, but it's also being built in partnership with the United States and other allies. So it's an important part of what we're doing. But I think David Crowe from Australia was next.
Thank you very much. David Crowe from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Further on the questions on Iran, Mr President, you've praised the Australian commitment today to deal with Iran in the Persian Gulf. And in your talks today with Mr Morrison, did you discuss further military action in order to keep the pressure on Iran? What might those military actions be, and what could Australia contribute to that?
So
and
we
Mr
didn't-
Morrison,
Yeah.
on that same
Hold it 1
issue-
second. You'll get a second, Craig. You get a shot at your Prime Minister. I'm sure you're looking forward to it. We didn't discuss too much Iran. We discussed more trade, more China. We discussed Afghanistan, where Australia is helping us, and we're slowly reducing in Afghanistan, as people know. We've been very effective in Afghanistan, and if we wanted to do a certain method of war, we would win that very quickly. But many, really tens of millions of people would be killed. And we think it's unnecessary. But Australia's been a great help to us in Afghanistan. But we're reducing in Afghanistan. We're reducing in Syria, where we had, we've taken over 100% of the caliphate. We have 100%. When I came in, it was smaller, but it was a mess. It was all over, and now it's in a position, and I won't repeat what I said before with the prisoners, but we have thousands of ISIS fighters from our work in capturing 100% of the caliphate. And we're asking the countries from where they came, whether it's Germany or France or other countries, to take those people back, put them on trial, do what they have to do with them. But the United States will not keep thousands and thousands of people for the next possibly 50 years or whatever it may be. It's going to be up to those countries. We did them a big favor. We went in. We took them down. The ISIS fighters, in the end, weren't very good fighters against the United States. But we have thousands of them, and we want them to be taken over by Germany, France, and all of those countries from where they came. Okay?
Thank you. And Mr Morrison, on the same issue of Iran, are you open to further military action against Iran, or is the Australian commitment solely contained to a freedom of navigation patrol exercise?
Well, as the President said, I mean, there are no further activities planned or requested for assistance from Australia. So the question to that extent is moot. And I want to commend the President, who's demonstrating, as he said in the earlier press conference in the Oval Office, restraint. There are other measures that he and the Secretary have announced today, and they are pursuing those channels. So the calibrated, I think, very measured response that the United States is taking has been a matter for them, and obviously at any time when issues are raised with us as an ally, we consider them on their merits at the time and in Australia's national interest. So I think that's where that's heading.
Well, thank you very much. And Jennifer, thank you very much. First Lady, thank you. And I hope you're going to be able to see tonight to the media, because really it's going to be a beautiful evening in honor of Australia and the Morrisons. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to a press conference held by President Trump alongside the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison. You could see our Ben Tracy getting mic'd up there. We're going to have a breakdown of the president's comments alongside the PM in our next hour coming up at 1 p.m. Also, we'll be talking about the Oval Office spray, where the president was asked very pointedly about that whistleblower allegation that's been in the news of late. You'll hear what the president had to say. For now, though, quick break. We'll be right back.
At least 2 people have died in Texas after tropical depression Imelda caused days of relentless rainfall and dangerous flooding. The National Weather Service estimates that some parts of Texas were hit with over 40 inches of rain in just 72 hours.
Now, crews in the southeastern part of the state have carried out more than 1,000 water rescues, and hundreds of people are still stranded. Janet Shamlian is in Beaumont.
Tropical Depression Imelda unleashed its wrath on southeast Texas, battering the region with pounding rain and flash flooding. The devastation reminiscent of some of the worst storms in U.S. history.
But I think it was a lot worse than what kind of the general public had anticipated.
In Beaumont, Coast Guard helicopters airlifted patients to safety one by one after they were caught in the rising floodwaters. In Houston, stranded drivers and their children wearing life vests were pulled to higher ground.
And the fact that there's cars stranded and people are getting high water rescued, that's never happened in our time that we've lived here, even after Harvey.
Ma'am, we gotta go. Even Houston's police chief, Art Acevedo, joined rescue teams, wading through chest-high water, urging homeowners to evacuate. Police and fire teams relied on good-hearted citizens, helping others escape danger. This tractor-trailer driver steered onto a flooded street, his truck cab filling with water up to the windshield. People nearby jumped on top of the truck, using a rope and hammer to save the man's life until officers could pull him to safety.
There was a car over there in the bayou.
Just north of Houston in the Aldine area.
So I ran and I tripped, but I got back up and I dived into the water.
High school football player Jaden Payne jumped into a car to help save a woman and her toddler after she drove her SUV into a ditch with about 15 feet of water.
I put her on the side of the grass and she put her baby on the grass. She just told me, she's like, "You're my guardian angel."
There were a lot of guardian angels throughout this area over the past 36 hours. People who just stepped in, volunteers, neighbors, when the official resources couldn't respond to every call. Throughout this area, schools are closed today. It is definitely not business as usual. We've got a lull in the rain right now, but there is more of it in the forecast. Vlad, Anne-Marie?
Janet, thank you.
A New Jersey man is facing charges for allegedly working for the terror group Hezbollah. 42-year-old Alexei Saab is accused of scouting potential attack targets in New York, Washington, and other cities. Investigators say he's been involved with Hezbollah since 1996. Saab was also allegedly trained in bomb-making and intel operations.
Authorities claim he scouted major landmarks as potential targets like the Statue of Liberty, United Nations headquarters, Times Square, and the Empire State Building. Saab also considered popular sites in Washington as possible targets, along with Boston's Fenway Park and Prudential Center.
President Trump is meeting with top officials at the Pentagon today. They're trying to determine how best to respond to Iran's alleged attack on Saudi Arabia's crucial oil fields. And all options are still on the table. Ian Lee is in Saudi Arabia following the latest.
This is the damage that they wanted to show us that Saudi says was done by Iran. 4 cruise missiles coming in from the north, the direction of Iran, hitting this oil facility. They are already making extensive repairs. They hope to have it done by the end of the month. A team of UN investigators are also coming here. They're looking at this facility. They're looking at the evidence, the cruise missile pieces, the drone pieces, to try to get an independent idea of where it came from and what happened. Now, Iran is denying that they had any hand in this, but next week is the UN General Assembly in New York. Iran is likely to face some tough questions there. Anne-Marie, Vlad?
All right, Ian, thank you. That'll do it here for now. I'll see you again Monday morning at 7 Eastern for CBSN AM.
Our colleague Laura Podesta takes over after a short break. Keep it right here. You're streaming CBSN, CBS News, always on.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Podesta. Thank you for joining us. President Trump once again dismissed a whistleblower's complaint that claims he made an improper promise to a foreign leader during a phone call. CBS News has learned the conversation in question centers around the country of Ukraine. Details are still shrouded in secrecy, and the complaint hasn't even been released to members of Congress. But the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, appeared to shed some context on this matter. During an interview, he suggested the president had wanted Ukraine to look into Joe Biden in exchange for military aid.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did. If the president of the United States said to the president of Ukraine, investigate the corruption in your country that has a bearing on our 2016 election, isn't that what he's supposed to do?
Hillary Clinton responded to that interview on Twitter, writing, quote, "The president asked a foreign power to help him win an election again." The controversy over Joe Biden and Ukraine centers around Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who served on the board of a Ukrainian gas company. In 2016, the U.S. and other countries wanted Ukraine to drop its top prosecutor who was investigating that company. The reason? They felt he wasn't tough enough on pursuing corruption cases. Then Vice President Joe Biden threatened to withhold money from Ukraine over this, but there's no evidence to suggest Biden did this to protect his son. President Trump today once again said that someone should investigate Biden, who is, of course, the frontrunner in the Democratic primary for president.
It doesn't matter what I discuss, but I will say this. Somebody ought to look into Joe Biden's statement because it was disgraceful, where he talked about billions of dollars that he's not giving to a certain country unless a certain prosecutor is taken off the case. So somebody ought to look into that, and you wouldn't because he's a Democrat. And the fake news doesn't look into things like that. It's a disgrace. But I had a great conversation with numerous people. I don't even know exactly who you're talking about, but I had a great conversation with numerous people, numerous leaders, and I always look for the conversation that's going to help the United States the most. It was a totally appropriate conversation. It was actually a beautiful conversation.
So let's bring in CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reed. Paula, we heard the president try to dismiss this whistleblower complaint, but do we know if he or his aides have read it or know who filed it?
Well, Laura, the president said he has not actually read the complaint. They have so far said they do not necessarily know the identity of the whistleblower, but the president and several other people in this White House probably have a pretty good guess. It's a very narrow group of people who are detailed through the White House from these various intelligence agencies. And here the president's insisting that any conversation he had with world leaders was appropriate. But in these other criminal investigations, Laura, we've seen where the president doesn't necessarily need to be explicit in a quid pro quo. He can apply pressure or try to get his point across indirectly. We've seen that where he's dangled pardons in front of cooperating witnesses in the Mueller probe. Also how he talked to former FBI Director James Comey about the Mike Flynn matter. The president has, as his former attorney describes it, sort of this mobster way of talking. So even if he says what he did was appropriate and may look appropriate on paper, it was apparently enough for this intelligence official to file a whistleblower complaint about this conduct.
And Paula, members of Congress still don't have their hands on this complaint, in part because the Justice Department has advised the Director of National Intelligence not to release it. Do we know why the Justice Department is doing that?
Yeah, Laura, I've spoken to several sources, and the arguments are twofold. The first is that any conversation with the president could potentially include issues of privilege. It's up to the president to decide when he wants to assert executive privilege. When the Director of National Intelligence saw this complaint, it was clear to him that there could be questions of privilege. He kicked it over to the White House counsel's office, the Justice Department. They took a look at this, and not only did they have concerns about privilege, they also argue that this cannot be a whistleblower complaint against the president. They said, look, there's no inspector general inside the White House for good reason. They're arguing legally the president is outside the purview of the inspector general. You can't, they argue, have the president's calls with foreign leaders subject to the whims or opinions of whistleblowers. So legally, they're arguing that this should not follow along the traditional rules, which usually require these complaints to be passed off to Congress.
All right, thank you, Paula. So let's bring in Kevin Cirilli. He is the chief Washington correspondent for Bloomberg. Kevin, prior to this whistleblower complaint, House Democrats had been investigating a call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine. Remind us why they launched this investigation in the first place.
to see what type of promise President Trump had made, if any, with regards to the Ukrainian officials. Look, all week long I've been talking with Democrats in particular who have been trying to get to the bottom of this. They're arguing that the Department of Justice is not complying with several of their requests. But Republicans, they say that the president deserves to have the ability to talk to whomever he would like to without having the risk of it being public and whatnot. So this is just the latest investigation that has now captured the attention of Capitol Hill. I can tell you it has been the dominant discourse here inside of the halls of Congress all week as folks have been trying to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The president said he knows that the whistleblower is partisan, although he also said he doesn't know who that whistleblower is. So, Kevin, do House Democrats have a plan in place to get this complaint if this standoff continues?
Well, there's a hearing scheduled for next week, and that hearing scheduled with regards to folks at the Department of Justice is going to no doubt be engulfed by these latest questions surrounding whether or not there is going to be able to have the details surrounding this this telephone conversation come public. But I'm not sure that folks are going to be able to get answers here simply because everyone is claiming that they have the ability to withhold that information. So, again, I think it's just the latest examples of Democrats trying to force for something, the administration taking a hardline approach, and here we are on Friday as we head into next week. But that hearing's the next development next Thursday.
And as you said, a lot of people want a lot of answers. Yeah. I want to turn to news that the U.S. has moved forward with additional sanctions on Iran. Yeah. This is in response to the attack on Saudi oil facilities. So, Paula, how significant are these sanctions?
Well, the president was asked about this just a short time ago. He says these are incredibly significant. I mean, when the president announced a few days ago that he was going to implement additional sanctions, first question a lot of people had is what else is there to sanction? But today, he and the Treasury Secretary, they announced sanctions against the central bank and the National Development Fund, targeting major sources of funding for terrorists. And they argue this is really the last place they can apply sanctions. The president was pressed on what happens next. He didn't really give any definitive answers if he has any options outside of military force or sanctions. He praised himself, in fact, repeatedly for his restraint in not pursuing a military strategy, and he insists he believes these sanctions work. But Laura, that's not what our allies believe. Many of our allies believe that this maximum pressure campaign by the Trump administration has not worked, and it clearly has not deterred, in their eyes, Iran from bad behavior.
And Paula, the president was also asked about China today. What did he have to say about making a deal with China?
We know that negotiations continue between the U.S. and China over the next several weeks. But the news I heard, Laura, is the fact the president does not think that he needs to reach a deal before the 2020 election. There have been a lot of questions for this White House about whether or not they feel pressure to reach a deal so that the president can bring that on the campaign trail, show his supporters. I know we have a little bit of yard work. It looks very beautiful, very festive today here as we host Australia. They do a great job keeping the grounds. But the president has been questioned about whether he feels pressure to reach a deal so he can show his supporters that he delivered on this promise that he made repeatedly to negotiate better trade deals for the U.S. So far, Laura, he has not been able to successfully solidify a trade deal. He has the USMCA, the deal he negotiated between Mexico, U.S. and Canada, but Congress has not approved that. I've spoken with top officials here at the White House this week. They believe that they've had some productive conversations with Democrats to allay their concerns about that deal, but there are no guarantees that Congress will approve that. And based on his answer, there's a chance he'll go back on the campaign trail, really with no successful trade deal.
And time is ticking. We know October 15th is when tariffs will be increased to 30%. So, Kevin, how is that likely to play with investors?
Well, look, tariffs have rocked Wall Street and injected volatility into the marketplace, not just in the United States, but around the world. Now, on the issue with regarding USMCA or NAFTA 2.0, as the administration likes to call it, the centrist Democrats have really been working behind the scenes in order to rally support in a lot of those districts that flipped from Republican to purple back in the midterm elections. The president, from his political strategic vantage point, signaling with that regard to the Chinese deal that he might not need a deal with the Chinese heading into the 2020 elections, and maybe even would be able to continue to politically attack President Xi Jinping on the campaign trail. There's some thinking inside of the campaign that might actually help him. On the flip side of all of this, the global volatility in the market that extends beyond the United States, but in the global economy as a whole, whether or not you're looking at Italy, Brexit, or a host of different other European countries, there's a lot of interesting economic data coming out of Beijing with regards to their manufacturing. All of that would seemingly lead to the debate that is being had around the world about whether or not there will be some type of slowdown or worse, a recession in the next 15 to 18 months. The bottom line, the business community, big business, small business, and Main Street business, they agree that tariffs are not something that they would like to see. They feel that tariffs hurt their supply chains, and they've been actively advocating against the use of tariffs. But I got to be candid here. When you talk to China, they say President Xi Jinping is playing a long game. I was in Houston last week for the Democratic debate. When I hear a lot of those candidates on the debate stage, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they have also said that they would utilize tariffs in negotiating with the Chinese just as aggressively as President Trump has.
All right. Thank you so much to Paula Reed and Kevin Cirilli for your insight.
Thank you.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is the latest Democratic presidential candidate to drop out of the 2020 race. De Blasio did not meet the fundraising or polling thresholds for the fall debates. A recent Siena College poll showed de Blasio at 0% in New York City. Here's how de Blasio explained his departure earlier this morning.
Getting out there, being able to hear people's concerns, address them with new ideas, it's been an extraordinary experience. But I have to tell you at the same time, I feel like I've contributed all I can to this primary election. And it's clearly not my time, so I'm going to end my presidential campaign, continue my work as mayor of New York City, and I'm going to keep speaking up for working people.
And President Trump reacted to the news on Twitter. He wrote, part-time mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, who was polling at a solid 0 but had tremendous room for growth, has dropped out of the presidential race. NYC is devastated. He's coming home. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now. So, Caitlin, did de Blasio make an impact on this presidential race?
That was quite a tweet from a fellow New Yorker. These two New Yorkers have been going after each other during this race. Look, Bill de Blasio really struggled to make his case. And when he got in, he didn't really have a theory of the case for his candidacy that wasn't already reflected in some other campaigns. So Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were already in the race trying to claim the leadership of the progressive mantle. And Bill de Blasio really just never found his stride. You mentioned that poll, that Siena poll, that 0% of New Yorkers wanted him,
big donut,
supported him. So that kind of shows where he was.
So what do you think comes next for him politically?
Well, it's interesting. He gave that announcement on cable news, but also when he got into this race, a lot of people thought, well, why choose the presidential race? Why not use your platform that you already have as the mayor of New York City and try to talk about your own proposals and try to make a difference there? So we'll see what's in store. I will say a big takeaway from his dropping out and others who have left the race as well is that the debate thresholds that you mentioned at the top have really had an impact on this race. They've really helped to narrow the field. Some Democrats have a lot of issues with that process, but it certainly has had an impact.
So at least 17 candidates will be in Iowa this weekend. We have talked a lot this week about Senator Kamala Harris and Iowa because her chief pollster showed her in 6th place in the early state. And now Politico reports Harris is betting it all on Iowa to break her campaign's free fall. So how is she changing her strategy?
Well, we were on a call with the campaign yesterday with a lot of other reporters, and the campaign was making clear that they are placing a big bet on Iowa. They even vowed to have a top 3 finish in the state. Now, Kamala Harris's campaign has really struggled to gain momentum again after that first debate that we were both at. You saw her go after Joe Biden, and really she got kind of a boost for her campaign. We saw that reflected in polling. The campaign now says that was mostly a sugar high, and that's pretty true. We saw her poll numbers really drop significantly over the course of the past 2 months as these other candidates have risen, Elizabeth Warren among them. Our CBS News Battleground Tracker found that from July to September, she lost 10 points, and she's losing support to Elizabeth Warren and to Joe Biden a little bit as well. So this is an effort by her campaign to kind of refocus, to focus on this early state. It's the first state to weigh in, as we know, and they feel that Iowa is kind of fertile ground for some underdog campaigns, and that this race, they argue, is pretty fluid.
Yeah, it was so interesting to see how much momentum she had after that first debate, and then the last two debates, she really lost it. So she's looking to Iowa. Let's turn now to guns. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer criticized Beto O'Rourke for his plan to buy back assault weapons. Beto responded to Schumer saying, quote, "What has he been able to get done? The American people are with us on this. They're just waiting on Congress to do the right thing." So do you expect more of these candidates to go after the leadership in the House and the Senate?
Well, what was striking about this exchange was that, by and large, the Democratic field has not gone after its own Democratic leadership. Instead, they've gone after Mitch McConnell. They've really focused on the Republican leader in the Senate for not bringing some of these bills through, bills that have passed the House. And so that was a really remarkable exchange because none of the other candidates have gone after Schumer. And you saw Schumer's aides and supporters of his saying, look, Schumer's been involved in this fight for a long time. They talked about his introducing of the Brady background check bill, his efforts on the assault weapons ban. And so this is an interesting exchange and something that we haven't seen from other candidates. I will note, however, that this has become a cause for Beto O'Rourke's candidacy. After the shootings in his hometown of El Paso, he has really taken this up as the driving force, really, for his campaign.
Do you think it's helping him in the race?
Well, it's caused some controversy. We certainly know after talking to Democratic voters, and we see this reflected in polls, that the issue of guns, especially after these recent shootings, has come up to the forefront. It's a top driving issue and a lot of activist groups have popped up to try to make this an election issue. But he has also said things that worry some Democrats in the general election. The mandatory buybacks, for example, of your AR-15 in the last debate, saying that we absolutely will take away your AR-15. So those kinds of things cause some controversy, but he feels like he is where the base of the party is.
And speaking of criticism, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he went after Senator Elizabeth Warren. Buttigieg responded to how Warren answered questions on The Late Show about whether her Medicare for All plan would raise middle-class taxes. We know that she never actually says that taxes are going to be raised. Right. Are more candidates trying to scrutinize Warren now that she's pulling ahead in the polls?
They are. This is an interesting development because so far Elizabeth Warren has been kind of unscathed by her opponents. They've mostly focused their attacks on Joe Biden, the frontrunner. But as we've seen Elizabeth Warren rise up, some of her rivals are certainly taking notice. That was a substantive argument from Pete Buttigieg, who is kind of waging somewhat of a more moderate campaign. We also saw some others this week take some shots at her. Amy Klobuchar saying that some of these ideas, not naming her, but saying some of these ideas being talked about in the primary may be best left for the faculty lounge. Of course, Elizabeth Warren's a former Harvard law professor. On the campaign call yesterday with Kamala Harris's campaign, they said that, we didn't come into this race with a lot of money from our Senate race, alluding to Elizabeth Warren as well, although not mentioning her. So we're starting to see a phase in this campaign, or a new shift, where these rivals are starting to take a look at her, which shows how serious her campaign is rising.
Yeah, it is windy at the top, they say. So finally, I want to show this image from our Ed O'Keefe of a selfie line that was forming at Chicago's O'Hare Airport to take pictures with Senator Warren. And I understand that you have a piece on candidates and selfies that's coming out tomorrow.
Yes.
On CBS This Morning, Saturday.
Yes, we're very excited. We have been tracking these campaigns for the past several months, specifically following how the selfie line has become the key feature of the campaign. It used to be autographs and big fundraisers where you could kind of buy your way in to take a photo with the candidate. These candidates are professionalizing the selfie experience. Elizabeth Warren has a fine-tuned operation, almost looks like an assembly line, taking pictures. Earlier this week, she stayed for 4 hours after an event just to take pictures. So they're about this kind of intimate connection, personal connection, but they're also about, mass marketing. A photo taken is a photo shared. It goes to social media and kind of has this viral effect. So a grassroots campaign. Free digital advertising.
And it's cost-free, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Caitlin Huey-Burns,
tuned.
we are so excited to watch. Thank you very much. And to see Caitlin's piece about the selfie strategy of 2020 presidential candidates, you can tune into CBS This Morning, Saturday, tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern. And ahead on CBSN, Tropical Depression Imelda turns deadly in Texas as heavy rains drench parts of that state. We will have the latest. Plus, President Trump built his 2016 campaign on boosting the economy. But despite lagging job growth in the Midwest, his approval ratings continue to rise. We'll explain. You are streaming CBSN. In 2016, Donald Trump campaigned on the promise of bringing back jobs to the Midwest. President Trump received support from blue-collar and manufacturing-dominated counties, giving him the edge in the 2016 election. But since taking office, economic growth in these counties has slowed below the national average, while his approval rating continues to climb. The Wall Street Journal recently explored why the president has continued to gain support throughout the Midwest despite a lack of job growth in that area. Aaron Zittner and Dante Cini worked on that report, and they join me now from our Washington bureau. Aaron is a news editor, and Dante is a data and politics reporter. So, Aaron, I'm going to start with you. You report that the job growth in blue-collar suburbs has lagged below the national rate, and yet President Trump's approval rating is slowly climbing there. Why is that?
Well, that's right. These are very important counties that we visited. They're scattered all through the Midwest and Pennsylvania. They're counties that are more reliant than most on manufacturing. They tend to be where white working class people live, and they swung very heavily behind Donald Trump, and he went to many of these counties and made specific promises that the economy would rebound. And what we found is that employment actually slowed in the 2 years since he took office compared to the 2 years before, and yet he's more popular than before. We can think of a few reasons why that would be.
So I'll turn to Dante. What issues are driving support for the president in places like Michigan's Macomb County and Pennsylvania's Luzerne County, two places that were key for his 2016 victory?
Well, I think, first of all, it's key to keep in mind that employment growth slowed, but it's still growth. So a lot of these places are growing. They're just they're growing below the national average. And I think something you always have to keep in mind when you look at economic data is we tend to view everything through a national prism. It's really about what you're experiencing on the ground. So if what you're experiencing on the ground is slightly better than it was 2 years ago, it still feels like improvement to you. That said, there are some other ways that he connects with voters in these communities. I think this promise that the promise that he's making